The podcast, they're not live. I haven't figured out how to do it where I can broadcast it onto YouTube, live from Zoom. So, but I'm amazed at how fast the Zoom program converts it to an MP4, and they separate the audio and the video, and it uploads to YouTube like insanely fast. So I've enjoyed it. This is not my preferred way to do a podcast. I really like to have it where it's just two people sitting in a room having a conversation, versus this, the virtual one for sure. But it's worked out pretty good. I mean, it seems like once we get going, it just seems to, I don't know, feel kind of normal. It's odd because, like my camera's above, like I'm looking at my camera now, but if I'm looking at you, I'm not looking at the camera. So the other way, like, I don't know, it's just more personable. We never talk over each other, that kind of thing, but I have 4 podcasts that I canceled before this stuff, hit. And I don't really want to book them back on yet because I want to sit down with their local, you know what I mean?
Right.
Now, where are you at?
Mokina. I'm local.
Okay, you're local too. Okay. Now, where are you teaching?
Southland College Prep in Richton Park.
Okay. Now, how do you like the e-learning setup? You said that the kids preferred Zoom. I never heard of it until now.
I haven't heard of it till last week.
Right. So yeah, you said they preferred that over the Google Hangout. I've never done the Google Hangout thing either, but I don't really care for the video calling before this, where we're all kind of separated. I didn't really care for that either. Like, if like you're gonna call me. I prefer my friends call me than text me. If we're gonna talk about something. Like, I don't want to sit there and go back and forth with text just because it's, I don't know, it's not personable. But anyway, so you're doing the e-learning thing. I have some questions as to, I know some people that homeschool. I don't know what your thoughts are on homeschooling, but it, like, the kids seem to turn out pretty good. Like, I don't know if I'm just getting lucky with the parents that I talk to, but like the parents that I know that their kids homeschool, they do real well. It takes about half the time that school takes.
Yeah. What I've found out, now teaching for a while, is that the kids, I do get some kids that have been homeschooled through grade school. And I think the behavior in the classroom is much better, maybe because it's a new experience for them, being in a classroom with 30 other people. But there's definitely some deficiencies in education.
Really?
There's some gaps that you would assume that you should have. I call it sort of the minimum requirement for being a 14-year-old kid. Things like being able to read a clock or understanding geography and some of those things that we probably took for granted with pretty good grade schools, in the area.
Yeah, right.
So there's definitely some deficiencies, but being stuck at home with your parents teaching you, I'd rather be in school, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm sure if you ask the kid, they would probably prefer the other, but you're kind of on lockdown if you're with your parents. You ain't gonna get away with shit either.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I couldn't even. My dad would have been horrible at it. Like, he's just not a good teaching. I had Bill Mosier on, and we talked about just teaching in general, and I think it's a skill, or it's even a talent. All the years I did construction, I had guys working for me, and I was pretty much teaching them how to do stuff. I was amazed at how many guys I would get who had zero ability to read a tape. Like, they had nothing. Like, I was like, what were you doing in school? How come you weren't, like, you didn't take any shop classes? I mean, you weren't going to go to college, so why weren't you preparing yourself for, this guy's like 20 years old, he can't read a tape measure, which seemed crazy to me.
Yes, that minimum knowledge requirement that you assume people have.
Right. And then The other one is the ability to do basic math would drive me nuts. Like, I don't know if I picked it up out of necessity or what, but like I do math all the time now, and I like math. Like I like it a lot. My sons are in like AP calculus, and when it comes to on the feet quick, multiplications, like I got them beat. As far as that goes.
And mental
But now,
math, yeah.
right, but I'm positive that they're way better at formulas and all that kind of stuff than I would be. Just I didn't have the schooling, but so yeah, I mean, I was amazed at that. I was amazed at how you could get all the way through school and not hardly know anything. And then it was shocking to find out when I got out of Lincoln Way how higher of a standard we were held to there than other schools were. I had a buddy that was at Lincoln Way that was a CD student, barely made it through on the skin of his teeth. He went to college. Turned out another buddy of mine that went to a school near there. I won't say which one. Same college, saw him there. He was a good student at the other school. He was a terrible student in college. And he was like seriously trying. He just didn't have the prepared, he wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, the best thing a school can do is provide rigor for its students, hold them accountable.
Right.
I mean, if you don't provide rigor, kids aren't learning. And I think definitely the Lincoln Ways, that's their thing. Hey, we're better than everybody else. That's the way that they want to portray themselves. They hold the students to high academic standards. There's a lot of schools and teachers that do not hold students to high academic standards.
Right. Well, that's what I thought with the homeschooling. Parents are going to make sure, like when I was teaching guys to do carpentry work, it was in my best interest that I think the thing I repeated was, do you understand? Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? Like I said that constantly because I don't want you to get this right. I want you to get it right so you can go on and do it without me holding your hand. So like, I would say all the time, does that make sense? Does that make sense? Because my objective was to actually teach you how to do it, not get you the answer to this problem. Sort of.
Yeah, repetition is the best way to learn, really. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it's the same with I've coached wrestling for years and years, and it's the same. There's guys that are just not good at it, and then there's guys that seem to have some sort of aptitude for teaching somebody something. So, I would guess that if you were homeschooled and your parent had that coupled with the fact that they really care that you get it, you might get further. Where there's, I don't know how your thoughts are on teaching, but I'm sure you run into teachers that you're like, you should do some other job.
we see that a lot.
Right. I mean, and sometimes I think that there's some people that end up teaching and it was their third or fourth thing that they never set out to be a teacher in the first place. And I don't know if those are the best teachers. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's my case. I was a financial consultant for 15 years and sold my business when I was 32 and took my 30s off. And then when, I ran out of money, I had to figure out what am I going to do?
Nice.
So I had a history degree. I like history. So it's a natural fit and I haven't looked back. I enjoy it. I love it.
So now world history, you're doing, hey, you got a little guy. There you go.
This is Amelia.
There you go.
Hi.
How are you, Amelia?
How you doing? Okay. Okay, bye-bye. She was on the phone with her cousin. It was my phone. She had to return my phone to me.
There you go. Yeah, my boys are doing whatever they're doing. I won't see them around. But we had to be outside today enjoying some of that weather, man. It was too nice outside today. I'm sure they're having big trouble in Chicago with the people congregating.
Yeah, I was actually talking to somebody we both know, Brian Glim, today. He was a Chicago cop.
Okay.
He's on vacation right now, but he's got to go back in a couple of weeks, and I don't think he's looking forward to it with everything that's going on right now.
No, I can't imagine. And, I don't know how the Chicago PD's doing, but I know the New York PD, they were turning up a lot of positives just with the amount of interaction that they have with the general public. They were in jeopardy as far as, a lot of positive tests.
Yeah, I heard something on the news today. There's something upwards of 90 Chicago cops have been tested positive, I think. So that's That's a big number. Just
Yes.
a few weeks ago, there wasn't that many in the entire state. So
Right. And I don't know. I really don't know what to think about this whole thing that's going on. I really don't. I know, like, I goof around on Facebook with the political stuff, but like, this isn't political. I don't know. Like, I see things that I'll read, and I'm convinced that we probably shouldn't have shut things down to the way we did. And then I see things that go into the infectious rate and then the mortality rate of this. And it seems like shutting it down is the only thing that we could have done. Maybe we're not doing enough, because today, like, we have a sportsman's club that's through our backyard. You can see it. There was a dozen bikers that busted in there today, just living life like they normally do. I'm guessing it was closed, but I'm sure they busted in there to see if they couldn't sit at the bar. Which, to me, I'm like, wow, guys. Like, I mean, I want to get back to work. I would appreciate if people would take this seriously so we could get this back online, because, I don't like not making money.
oh, the damage it's going to do to small businesses. That economic impacts can be felt for a long time. Now, are we saving lives? I hope so. Right? I hope so, that
Right.
and we're stopping this from being something bigger than it is. But there's going to be a big economic impact from all of this.
I hope it's not as bad as they're thinking, because we didn't have an economic problem before this. So hopefully we can swing right back into it again, and it won't be, a problem. But I don't know how, unless we get testing online where we really know who has it, who doesn't have it, who's already had it. I don't know how we go back to work, because it seems like the second you go, and I guess work's not the biggest problem. It's situations like, NBA games and NHL games and big crowds that you're going to sit in, and concerts. But those are a huge part of our economy that aren't happening. So I don't know. It's
when
crazy.
can we get 30-40,000 people back together in one building again? Right? I
Exactly.
mean,
No, I don't know. I don't know. And it doesn't seem like, and from what the, like, Fauci's saying and stuff like that, they're expecting the heat to damper it a little bit, but they expect it to kick back up again, like a second wave in the fall. So I don't know if you have what seems interesting to me is I've read some stuff on the antibodies testing. So not really testing for the virus, testing to see if you have the antibodies. So if you've had the virus already, if you've had the virus already, you're supposed to have some sort of temperature immunity that you can go back to work. You're immune to it for a certain amount of time. Then you would periodically get retested to make sure you're still carrying the antibodies. But if we could at least get those people back to work, being a guy who 17 years ago broke his neck, I don't use my diaphragm the same way that I used to before I was paralyzed. So I'm compromised. Like, I'm just going to stay the hell away from it until they have some sort of treatment, because I don't want my lungs to shut down. That would be a big bad thing for me as far as that goes.
I feel your pain. I have a self-induced asthmatic condition I've had since the summer. I put an addition on my house, and I did all the insulation myself on a 100-degree day up in my attic, breathing in fiberglass for about 12
Oh,
hours. And there's certain things.
it stayed with you?
It's still a problem. About once every 2 weeks, I have an asthma attack, basically. Uh,
Wow.
I gotta, and I have to go to the doctor to get it looked at. But there ain't no way I'm going to the doctor right
No,
now.
right. No, they were saying in New York that people were coming in for a broken leg or broken arm or some trauma, and 90% of the people that were leaving the ER were testing positive 2 weeks later.
Yeah, it was like that before COVID-19. Man, you couldn't get me in an emergency room because people that are sick with all kinds of things are going to emergency rooms.
I agree, and I don't know. I feel that, like, not to be political, but I feel that there's a certain recipe for disaster in this country. As a contractor, I was never sick. There was no way. I'm the guy, man. If I don't come to work, 5 guys lose a day's worth of work. So I go to work no matter what. Luckily, like, as of right now today, I haven't been sick in about 11 or 12 years. like at all. Like I don't get sick. I just super healthy, eat super good. I probably get 12 miles a weekend in the wheelchair. Um, so like, fitness and, like lifting, like that's always going on with me. Uh, if I was sick, I don't know how it'd be, but I know that there's lots of people in this country that would not lose a day's worth of pay to go to the doctor and spend whatever it is, $85 or $105 for the doctor's appointment, then 65 to 150 on whatever pills they're going to give you after you leave the doctor's office. Then you took the day off work because you feel like shit, and you didn't get any rest because you spent the whole day at the doctor's office. So, it's just a bad recipe, because it's a sneaky ass bug, man. It's like you don't show any symptoms, but you're shedding the thing all over the place. And then when you do show symptoms and you don't go to the doctor, you figure you could ride it out, you're going to get everybody sick, sort of a thing. Like there was that one, they had it whittled down in New York to one guy.
Like patient zero, huh? Got everybody, right?
Yes, and he went to he traveled abroad to Europe, came back. He had it. He was asymptomatic, but he went to a large gathering. There was like 250 people there, and he infected like 60 people. And it was like that first town, like Rochelle or whatever it was in New York, and they shut that town down because it was like, what the hell's going on? We got all these cases of pneumonia. Everything's going crazy. And it was this one guy. He didn't know, it wasn't his fault. But it's just crazy to me that if you don't want to go to the doctor, you're causing a lot of trouble. So I'm good God. I can't imagine even thinking about going to the doctor for a cold. Like that would not be a thing that I would do.
No, definitely not.
Cost too much.
That's why I shut the schools down. I hadn't gotten as, going back to what you said, I don't think I was sick for 20 years. I don't go to the doctor.
Right.
And since I've been a teacher for the last 7 years, I get a couple colds a year, but it's just because schools are petri dishes.
Yeah,
you can't get away from it.
Right.
So when this started going down, they closed down the NBA. All the teachers started talking. We're like, man, they're going to shut us down. They have to.
I think that's the minute I took it super serious, was I heard the NHL and the NBA, these multi-billion-dollar industries were closing their doors. I was like, what the hell? The youth wrestling outfit in Illinois, the IKWF, canceled their state. And I know that they do like over $1 million worth of revenue in the 3 days. So like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is super serious as far
more
as
serious than they were letting on at the right off the bat.
Right. Absolutely. So
we had a Zoom with our principal. It was maybe early last week or 2 weeks ago, and he was just talking about the situation, everything that's going on. There was a bunch of teachers. I was in the freshman groups. All the freshman teachers were on there, and he said in his circles, principals, superintendents, things like that, they have to start making arrangements to start thinking about not opening schools even at the beginning of next year if this is still going on. Now, he said that may not be the case, but they have to put some sort of action plan in place, being, the administrators. What happens if we don't open school come August, 2020?
So how do you feel about that? I mean, do you think you can successfully run your classes this way?
Somewhat. So as a history teacher, I'm really a literacy teacher now. So I'm trying to build reading literacy in my class, and history is sort of secondary. So I hover over them in the classroom. I'm making sure they're reading, taking margin notes, annotating. Those a lot of skills they'll need for college. When they're doing my readings at home, they're just pinpointing the information they need to answer questions, things like that. And I can't really grade their close reading, their annotating and margin notes and things like that.
Right.
I can't do a lot of the sort of in your face stuff and modeling, like, hey, you're doing this wrong, here's how you do it.
Right. So I can't, it's so not hands-on. Will they try and do something where they make the class size smaller? Like, okay, so when you do the Zoom classes, are they live?
Yeah, just like this. So
Okay,
I
all
got,
right, right.
and I got, see the two boxes with us in it. I got 25 little boxes with all my students, and then they can
Right.
choose to show their video and audio and stuff like that. I have them all muted, and they have to press the raise hand button.
Saw that. Yep. Okay.
And then or they can put questions in chat. So I went through I have we're just got out of our Africa unit. So I have a 6 question sort of opinionated assessment on our Africa unit that they have to do. And they do everything on a Google Doc, so I can see it real time. I can make comments on it. Uh, so in the Zoom, they can ask me questions about the assessment privately, or they could raise their hand and use their audio and speak in front of the rest of the class.
Okay.
For a history class where it's a lot of reading and literacy based, it's really just good for me as like a question answer forum or clarifying things. The real work is they got to read and they got to understand and critical thinking, and part of it is to make informed citizens. So with the state the media is in, be able to detect bias and opinion and things like that.
Right.
Those are the real sort of underlying goals of a social studies or history class in high school these days. So it's tough to get those things through, uh,
I can
not in a classroom. So it's got some serious challenges. I'd rather be in the classroom uh, than doing it like this.
Right. Now, are you able to, like, things that were in the classroom? I mean, I've been in a high school classroom in forever now, obviously, but like, it's a lot of video and stuff now, right? Not so much chalkboard and like, are
Uh,
you using like computers and tablets and stuff like that?
Yeah, I use Google Slides. So every day they come in and we got a big screen, and my learning objective is on there for the day. And then we got a bell ringer question. Start the day. Got what we're gonna do up on the screen for the day. But most of the learning takes place old school, out of readings, books, things like that. I show a video every now and then just to break the monotony, but the goal is to raise their reading competency. So it's learning about history comes secondary. It's we just using the content to build skills, because it's different than when we were kids.
Yeah.
We had to learn the stuff and memorize it. Now they can pull out their phone, and in 5 seconds they can have any piece of information that mankind can provide.
Yeah,
So
that's amazing. Like, and I think I mean, I dig it totally. Like, I'll tell you what, I use Google constantly for, like, I don't know, I want to know stuff. I was not the greatest student when I was in school, but like I am constantly, I'm listening to podcasts now. I mean, I half-ass speak a second language now. I I listen to audiobooks all the time. The one I just got done with was that uh, what's that? William Zim's History of the United States. Um,
yeah, I had to read that in college.
right, right. So I mean, like, but like these are things I'm just doing because I'm doing them. Uh, like I've read books that were just like biographies on Washington, on Lincoln, just stuff for I guess for kicks. Shit, I would probably not have gone anywhere near in high school as far as that goes. But the amount of information that's at your fingertips now, it's amazing. I mean, I'm almost the shit that I memorized when I was in school, it's worthless compared to what I can, even someone that's an expert on the subject. My son said that they did some sort of study where someone that was an expert on the subject could answer 200 questions in an allotted time. But in that same allotted time, somebody with a computer could answer 600 questions on any topic.
So I tell the students that what we're teaching them is, how do you know if that's good information or not? That's more important. Can you quickly read it? Can you quickly understand it? Because you don't have to memorize the information. You got to know some of the sound bites, but if you want the details, you can go in and you can get the details from anywhere. So
Right,
it's,
right.
can you read effectively? Can you understand what you're reading? Can you verbalize it? Can you put it in your own words? And can you detect the bias? Can you detect the opinion? And I mean, that's where we're at as far as teaching now, because the information, everyone's got it. We all, our memory is limitless because all we got to do, we got it with us on our phone.
Right. And I mean, they say that memory will play tricks on you anyway. You'll think for sure you remember some certain thing a certain way, and that's not the way it happened. Like they'll have eyewitnesses at a scene of a crime that it happened in front of all these people, and they'll get 4 different stories.
That's
As far,
psychology. I love it. I used to teach
but
psychology.
I'll tell
We
you what, my college courses, that was my favorite one, was psychology. It was so interesting. Everything from object permanence in the very beginning of the psychology courses to Pavlov's dog and like just everything. Just trying to figure out the way people think is it's pretty interesting shit.
Yeah, we look at something and our brain will, if it's not complete, our brain will complete it even if it's wrong. So
Right. I know.
multiple
You'll
multiple
fill in the
accounts
blanks.
of the same thing can be completely different.
Right. So, well, that's good that it's done that way. How do you? I really never paid that much attention to bias in history until I started like that
Howard
book.
Zinn.
Yes, like, and he says in the book a couple times, I'm not trying to like sway anybody a certain way. I'm just trying to show you another angle of the slave trade and how the Indians were treated and stuff like that. So
Yeah, being Americans, we're taught to believe we're always the good guys. That's it's not always the case. We
no,
not. I mean,
history's written by the victors. So
yeah.
right.
So we try to change that perspective now and try to bring everybody's voice in. But I mean, we got a shady past in our own country. Doesn't mean you can't be proud to be an American. We got a great country, but we have to understand and see where we came from, and that hey, we've conquered some of these dumb things we did.
Sure.
We've made mistakes as a country, but we've learned from it. We built from it, so we make ourselves better moving forward.
I'll tell you
So
one that I don't remember ever learning about was the internment camps for the Japanese Americans.
yeah, I teach
I
that.
I do not remember that in school at all. I remember being like blindsided by it, like what? I saw a movie that had it in there. It was like Snow on Cedars or something like that. And then I started looking into it and I'm like, oh my God, this if this would have broke bad, not to, like make any excuses for Germany, but if somehow this would have swung the other way, how would we have treated those people in those camps if we were running low on food and ammunition? Like everything was,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not positive how we would have done it. So yeah, no, I mean, yeah. And there's two takes on it. I made friends with some people that were Canadians. I spent a couple weeks a year always in Canada. And some of their view of the indigenous people of that area were pretty rough. They were like one guy was like, "You're a conquered people. I don't care." And I'm like, "Geez, man, I don't know if that's a great way of looking at it." But he didn't. He was like, "It's ours now. I don't care that we took it." And I'm like, "All right, then there's no sense having that conversation with you." But he was downright belligerent about those people. And I don't know if it's the proximity he was living in with them because he was dealing with a lot of like inhaling junkies and stuff like that. Like there was a lot of problems on the reservation that he was living there. So I don't know if he just had a tainted view of it or what, but he was not nice about it. That's for sure.
Well, that highest alcoholism rate in our country is in the indigenous, Americans
Right.
on the reservations. Guy on our $20 bill, Andrew Jackson, ignored a Supreme Court order that he could not remove Native people from Georgia, and he did anyway by gunpoint.
Wow.
Trail of Tears.
Right.
So, I mean, we got a guy's on our $20 bill, and he was a jerk.
Yeah. Right. Well, that was the other one, right? I mean, what are you, a year or two younger than me?
I was born in '74, so
Oh, yeah.
graduated in '92. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you were upperclassman when I was a freshman, I think.
Right. Yeah. You were a freshman. I was probably senior. But the Columbus thing, my entire youth, that he was a hero. And then, not so much now, right? Now, I don't, care about any of that stuff. It makes no difference in my day-to-day life. I find it interesting. I think that's what I like about like movies now versus movies 50 years ago. the realism that they try and portray, if there's not a slant, you know what I mean, to it. But like they try and be more true to the actual story. Like I would much rather watch Tombstone than I would the Shootout at the OK Corral, which was 40 years earlier, right?
Hey, Tombstone's great, man. Val Kilmer was great. Doc
Oh my
Holliday.
God. It's got to be, that's, there on so many levels, that's one of my favorite movies of all time. I only have like a handful of people that I consider actual friends of mine. I'm a wrestling coach. I deal with all kinds of people all the time. I'm a friendly guy. I'm a realtor. So like, I'm a people person as far as that goes. But like, I only have a 6 or 7 people that I'm like, this is my friend, like my tight guy. That scene where the guy goes, "Oh, Doc, what are you doing out here?" And he goes, "Wyatt Earp's my friend." And he goes, "Hell, Doc, I got lots of friends." And he goes, "Well, I don't." And I was like, "Man, exactly right." So no, I love that movie. And Val Kilmer was, like I don't know, he transcended that role for sure. It's like
Yeah.
the Heath Ledger Joker.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's an iconic role there.
Right. But I mean, it seems like if you watched a movie that had to do with American history about Daniel Boone or Davy Crockett or something like that from 50 years ago, you get a lot of nonsense. It's a lot of just like the folklore legend crap that's in there. But if you watch the Alamo, the more recent one, you'll get some historical stuff about Houston and all that kind of stuff, which is it's interesting for sure.
It's more accepted now, to be honest, in history. I think we're a more open society. To criticize the United States back following World War II and before, man, that you could alienate yourself. McCarthyism and what are you, a communist? And then
doesn't it seem like that's what the framers wanted us to do? It seems to me that they wanted us to question authority. Like that was the whole point of not having a monarchy. Like, it was, they're not infallible. So you should have that sort of a thing. Like it's a nation built on rebels, if for lack of a better word. Like, there's that certain racism part to that, kind of the rebel thing. But to be able to, not just take I guess some of that's like kind of what's biting us in the ass now, right? If we're to believe the China's numbers for this coronavirus, it's because they locked them people down and they could tell them exactly what to do, and the people just believed the government. They didn't. Where I see people on social media right now, ain't no government gonna tell me what to do. I'm gonna go do this and I'm gonna do that. And I'm like,
but we're taught to believe that. That's our mentality in the United States.
Right.
Hey, you just described my dad.
Yeah, right. Well, and I mean, I'm always amazed. That's why I like to have conversations with people, because you can have my grandmother was a Marine. My grandfather's 101st Airborne in World War II in the European theater. My dad's a Vietnam veteran Marine, Force Recon Marine. So my family's all combat vets. My grandmother's obviously not a combat vet, but they're super liberal. Like they're Democrats forever and ever. When I would get in arguments with my father, I was the capitalist pig in the room. It was a big pain in the ass to the guy. He wanted to kill me all the time with all that stuff. But I was a non-union contractor, and he was a union butcher. So, like, he was upset that I didn't have union guys and stuff like that. I'm like, listen, Pops, I can't. There's the market in the area that I work in just won't. I'm not building skyscrapers. I'm building homes. So, but he didn't want any, no bullshit around that. But then I meet other people that, did a stint in the military, and they claim that the reason that they're so conservative is because of the military. And I'm like, I just can't wrap my brain around that because of where I came from, sort of a thing. So I don't ever like to judge a book by the cover, because I never know what somebody's going to say or what they're going to have, going on in their head as far as that goes. And for me, Facebook's a terrible place to have those conversations.
Without a doubt.
Right. And I mean, right now I'm at the point with Facebook that all I do is return whatever somebody does, I do it in kind. So if a guy jumps on something I posted as a joke and it's like, you're a fucking idiot, and I'm like, all right, this is what we're going to do, then we'll just do that, because we're not going to have a discussion about what I said. You just want to call me names. So I guess I'll just call you names, and then you'll go away. We won't do that anymore. But some of my closest friends are, they consider themselves Republicans. They consider themselves Trump supporters. And we can sit and have beers and have conversations about things and never, ever leave the conversation. I'm never upset with them. They're never upset with me. But a Facebook one with someone I hardly know, they'll be livid. And I'm like, this shouldn't be like this. I've seen a lot of paintings of our framers, and most of the time they're debating each other.
Yeah, that's what our government was set up to do.
Right.
And it's also, they put in multiple layers so not one group is too powerful. It's called federalism. We got local laws, we got county laws, we got state laws, all different law enforcements that can police each other. They police each other. And then, the federal government has to stay out of most state business. I mean, it's our 11th Amendment, I think. They have to stay out of state business for the most part. So the government was set up by our founding fathers pretty well. Now, they didn't always follow the right words. I mean, they started off with all men are created equal. That definition of man wasn't right at the beginning.
Right.
But if you look at the words today, all men are created equal, we have expanded that definition, and it actually does include everyone. Sure. So it was written correctly. It has not always been implemented correctly.
No, I mean, when it was written, that guy meant white property owners, and that's it. And men. I mean, women were not equal to it. I mean, to tell somebody, like, that's one of those things that I'm not a pot smoker, but like if I was to sit down and be smoking pot with a bunch of people or something like that, those are conversations that people get their hair blown back by, that not that long ago, a woman couldn't vote. It's
not long ago at all.
Right. It seems insane to me that that's another citizen that's like, an American, just like I'm an American, and they had no say at all. And they had to fight to get through that suffrage. Like it almost seems like a no-brainer, but then again, we put human beings in bondage, and they had to fight to get out of that. That seems like a no-brainer too. The grotesqueness of movies like 12 Years a Slave and stuff like that. Like I don't care for that part of it. Like it needs to be there because people need to understand that's how it went. But it's too much. Like it's the Brad Pitt character, who was a Canadian, was like, this slavery thing this can't be right. Like, you can't do it this way.
I just taught Africa for, a month and a half. And we start with, what Africa was like before the Atlantic slave trade, before European contact, really, and then afterwards. And the day that I lecture about the Atlantic slave trade and I give first-person accounts of it. I play an audio where someone's reading a biography of someone that was transported during the Atlantic slave trade. Man, by the end of the day, I'm done emotionally. But I got to talk about that, for how horrible people were to humans for, 6 times a day, for a week, really. Yep. I'm done, man. I go home, I'm done. I'm emotionally done. It's disturbing. It's horrible.
Yeah, I didn't really even you're saying that, and it's making me think now about how there's so many grotesque things that humans have done to humans. History is just littered with almost every great thing that's ever been built was built on slave labor. The pyramids, just anything, the Aztec temples. I mean, everything was built on slave laborers as far as that goes. Like, you don't see things I'm sure the Great Wall of China was built on mostly slave labor. I don't know. I've never looked into that, but I got to guess that that's what that was put together with. So that's all crazy. And then take into stuff like Genghis Khan and the wars and all the things that they did. I mean, I think a lot of people never realized that, like, the Vlad the Impaler, that's an actual person in history, right?
Yeah, he was a crusader. He defended his lands against Muslim invaders, and he put their heads on pikes saying, I don't want any Muslims coming in here. Then they snuck into his castle, killed his wife, and he he swore at God, and that's
Yep.
how he became Dracula, according to,
Yeah.
the
Right.
legends.
Right. 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 But I mean, the actual man was a man who
Yeah, it's a true story.
yeah, right, put people on pikes. He like I read some stuff where he had like a whole road that he just had pikes all down the road with people on him. Like it was just like
And his intent was to protect his people.
right,
I
right.
just read a great short story from a book called Warriors that was edited by George R. R. Martin, who did Game of Thrones. And there's a story in that that's just crazy. I read a lot of science fiction, and it's about alien invasion, right? Like think about Independence Day or They
Yeah,
Live or any of those where aliens infiltrate us, and they can get here. They got better technology.
we're in
Well,
trouble. Yeah,
so
right.
I'm reading this, and halfway through this short story, I got no idea where it's going. There's human rebel forces fighting in Eastern Europe, and the protagonist meets up with this guy who's kind of different, doesn't come out during the day, and turns out being Dracula. And they steal a enemy spaceship, and Dracula goes up on the spaceship, and it's over. He
That's
wins.
crazy. That
I didn't realize that the story was going this way. I just actually recommended it to a buddy of mine. I'm like, this is crazy good. I want to see
ah,
the movie. But
right, right,
yeah, he's known to be defending his own people, right?
right. Which I mean, that's every well. So I always have that debate too, and I feel like people don't know history well enough that they don't know that there's dangers in like I got buddies that don't see any danger in nationalism. And I'm like, you know, in the history of the world, there's been very dangerous people that were nationalists. I mean, like
Napoleon, that's where nationalism really took root
right,
in
right.
Europe.
I mean, Hitler would be another one, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that guy's a nationalist to an extreme. So, and then my other thing with nationalism that I like, I don't want people to be confused with. I like George Carlin's take on it. Like being proud of being an American is a dumb thing because it's you didn't do anything to accomplish that. Like it's not
Yeah,
a
you're born here.
yes, you didn't climb a mountain, you didn't do any of that stuff. But um, when it becomes dangerous is when there's a problem. I don't mind, or I think it's a healthy thing for us to have a feeling that we're all in this together. So like, if we're like, I'm a guy that I love every wrestling tournament they play the national anthem. I'm a, hand over my heart, mouthing the words guy. Like I like that stuff. When I see the Olympics and our guys on top of the podium, I get a little choked up. I love that stuff. But, like for me, there's a difference between patriotism and nationalism. Patriotism is more about trying to do something for your neighbor, trying to make the world that you live in a better place versus just that flag waving, constant, when people say stuff, and I mean, I don't know, I really don't know what your politics are, and didn't mean to get into this, but it's part of history. I I don't I don't seem to understand when someone's upset when they see there's a debate stage. Every damn thing on there is red, white, and blue, and stars and spangles, and the whole thing looks as American as it could possibly look. And their biggest gripe with the whole thing was there wasn't enough American flags on the stage.
They could have had 100 American flags on the stage, and they'd still find something to gripe about.
Right, but it just doesn't make any sense to me that that's even a thing. Like, why don't you? I think that our framers wanted us to have conversations about the topics they're talking about in the debate, not whether they had the lapel pin or like, the kneeling during the national anthem and all that. Like, God damn, can't we find something else to like? I know that there's bigger problems in this country
Um,
than that.
public policy is almost non-existent in political discourse now when it comes to candidates, especially from the same side, because they don't want to get into policy because that could lose votes. What
Right.
about the national deficit? What about crime rates in inner cities? What about education, which is a joke at the federal level? I mean, uh, I'm not getting political here because this is pretty much unanimous
Right.
throughout the education community and on both sides, Republican and Democrat. The head of the Department of Education for our country now is a joke. A joke. It's
It's
hilarious.
alarming. It's alarming how much it's a joke. It, even all of those departments. It seems to me that these people were put in this place almost to destroy. The head of the EPA is a climate science denier. Listen, okay, listen. I have a respect for someone who has that opinion. That's a discussion you can have, but you can't put that person in charge of that.
No, yeah, I'm a huge fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson. I don't know if you know what that is.
Oh
I
God,
bet you do.
yes, but you know why, right? Like, I mean, everything about Neil deGrasse Tyson is in my wheelhouse. That guy was a Harvard wrestler.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. The guy was a badass. He
Oh
was
man, he's a total polymath then.
right. He's
So
a
there's a
badass.
great podcast that he does, great speech, and he talks about NASA. And NASA needs funding and all this,
Yes.
and he's like, and I think it was to either the House or something. He was talking to politicians. He goes, "Here's the problem. The problem is that politicians are lawyers. They're not scientists. They're not teachers.
Right.
They're not engineers. They're not scientists. Whatever." They're not going to make the best decisions because the people who need to be in those roles making decisions for education need to be people from education. People making decisions for, the Civil Corps engineers, they have to be engineers.
Right.
People making the decisions for NASA, they have to be scientists.
Right.
They're not.
Well,
They're
I saw
people
right.
whose job depends on pleasing as many people as possible in order to get reelected again.
Right. And that so there was a Harvard professor, and I just talked about this a couple nights ago with Carl, that was running in 2016 for the Democratic nomination, and he was a self-proclaimed single issue candidate. His first name was Lawrence. I can't remember his last name, but he was running on, the only thing in his platform was to remove money from politics, from campaign finance. He wanted to move towards publicly funded elections. And his claim was that once we took the money out where people weren't beholden to their, donors, that we could solve all these other problems would just fall in the line, because now politicians would be just beholden to the voter and that's it. So it was it was a socialist way of looking at it. But if this guy got the proper amount of signatures, he could run for president, whether it's 100,000, whatever the hell you needed, but he would get the funding to run a presidential campaign. They would severely limit the amount of time that they run for their, run for office and all that other stuff, but it would take all the money out. There'd be no super PACs. It'd be gone. We would have a better democracy if that was.
Oh, for sure. Because right now it's basically who could throw enough money at the campaign. Although Bloomberg showed us that wasn't actually the case.
Well, I think you got to disguise it a little bit, right?
He didn't disguise anything.
Nope. He just showed up and said, "I got billions of dollars and I want to buy that," and I can't.
I wish I had a printing company. I wonder how the Bucci's did on printing all those political flyers and that.
Yeah, right.
Their print shop probably does pretty well.
Yes.
During
right.
I have to ask him about that.
Well, right. I guess that would be a guy that would lose some money if we went to publicly funded election.
Yeah, Dan and Gino are a couple of wonderful guys. So
absolutely, another wrestler. But, Neil deGrasse Tyson, I'm a huge fan. We would lift weights and watch the Cosmos, in the gym. That show is terrific.
Oh yeah,
coming up another season of that. I have watched his podcast. And I've watched every podcast he's been on for Rogan and stuff like that. So I enjoy that. I don't understand why we don't do exactly what you said, why there aren't more scientists in charge of that. And it's I think the worst thing that Al Gore ever did for the environment, besides, flying around in a jet plane, was to not get a conservative Republican to team up with to do those tours. He turned it into a political argument, which it's not. Neil deGrasse Tyson's got a great saying where he's like, science doesn't care if you believe in it or not. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. This is science. This is how it works. So if he just would have got a counterpart that was a conservative, this whole thing could have been different. And it's concerning that we put profits and jobs over the top of the planet. To me, to me, it bothers me.
I think what's happening in a lot of places now, especially you look at Venice and some of these places that have very little human movement right now, very little emissions. The carbon footprint has been dwindled down to next to nothing.
Right.
And just in a few weeks, how wildlife is returning, how waters are cleaning up in
Yep.
just a few weeks.
Yep.
That's not political. There's no climate change isn't a political issue.
Right.
We got to inject politics into everything, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
I live here on a lake, and there's almost never a time in the wintertime now that we have enough ice to ice fish. Like it's insane how thin the ice is all the time. Now, if we go through most of this summer and industry shut down the way it is, and next winter we have 10 inches of ice out there, I'm going to be like, okay, there's a problem that we're not addressing. We're obviously putting too much carbon in the atmosphere. And like Neil deGrasse Tyson goes into that. He explains how carbon holds heat in the atmosphere. Like that it's not political. It's not even up for debate. The elevation of carbon is there, and then it doesn't cool down the same way, and then we don't have a base temperature that's the same. So, and I was like, I don't like to have that argument because, like I said, it does turn into some political thing, and it's like I can't.
It's not a political argument though.
I agree.
Hey, we got you clean your house. You keep your house clean. Probably we got to keep our planet clean.
Well, my thing to them is always like, hey man, what's the downside? What's the downside to having less of this thing? And they will say stuff like, profits and stuff like that. And I go, I really don't care about the billionaire having $1 billion.
Imagine the jobs that be created in a movement toward more replenishable fuel sources.
Absolutely.
There's a whole industry waiting for engineers and laborers and construction workers to start putting the infrastructure in place for it could help the economy, right, if anything. And what we're still getting oil imports from Saudi Arabia, who doesn't let women vote or drive.
Right.
So,
Well, now, okay, so when I look at it seems like it just takes enough time for those other industries to get their foothold in the new industry. Like they hold it off long enough, right? Electric cars, they were trying to make electric cars like in the 70s after the, fuel shortage thing and everything else that was going on. And people fought against it. And now, I don't know if you've ever been in an EV or they're freaking amazing. Like, I mean,
if I can afford a Tesla, I'd buy one tomorrow.
Absolutely.
We've already established I'm a school teacher. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
Right. I have a Subaru that I love, and I'll probably have that vehicle for the next 8 or 10 years now. But yeah, when I'm done with that, I'm hoping that enough companies have switched to EVs because it's just an amazing way to get from place to place. But
I tell my students this. So you look at certain people who are trying to make a difference. If these are the people who your grandchildren are reading about in my history class, or whoever takes over for me, I'll be long gone by then. If they're talking about how Elon Musk changed the world, even though he's a little bit crazy, that's a good thing, right? We read about guys that changed the world for the better, socially, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. or Thomas Edison. These are the guys in the history books that made great changes. If Elon Musk is in our history books, then we're heading in the right direction.
I think that Nikola Tesla is a pretty interesting character as far as history goes. Like that's an interesting, and some of it like gets crazy because people add things to it that aren't true.
Right.
But he's an interesting character as far as history goes. With being a history teacher, is there anything topical now? Like, do you focus some more conversation on like the plague and like the Spanish flu? Because those are
Yeah.
all things in history we should have learned from.
Oh, we spent a lot of time talking about the plague and the amount of culture that's created around it, especially in the Middle Ages. Uh, Most of our Disney stories about princesses and stuff like that, these are medieval stories that are coming from Grimm fairy tales. That we use the word Grimm, that was their last name, the brothers that
Yeah,
collected
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah.
stories.
Right.
We use that word as an adjective to describe things that are dark and bad.
Sure.
It's because they collected these stories that came up around a period of time where there was so much death.
Right.
uh, the Disney princess endings, the real Grimm fairy tales, are not the same ones that you're seeing on Disney Plus these days. If you go get
Yeah.
an unedited Grimm fairy tale book, not
Right.
for children, they're horror stories.
Sure,
And the
sure, sure.
culture around the Black Plague, there was so much death that these became children's stories because children were so accustomed to it. My daughter came home from preschool. She goes to preschool at Lincoln Way, which is fantastic. She's got the students working with her. They're always
Right, right.
working on stuff. So it's a great preschool. She comes home from school singing Ring Around the Rosie one day when I'm teaching the Black Plague at school.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking she's singing a song about the Black Death
He's right. Yeah,
in
he
in
doesn't know it.
2020 or 2019.
Yeah, yeah.
And I teach that. We go line by line through Ring Around the Rosie, and I explain to my students exactly what each of those lines means, and they're like, "Oh my God!"
See,
Right?
now those are the greatest things a teacher can do. You're going to grab someone's attention with that kind of thing. So I think those are awesome. I love it when I hear something. Just the other day, like I never put together that the word quarantine was about 40 days in the hole.
I never thought about that. I never
Well,
heard that
so
before.
right. So like when a ship would come in and there was something on the ship, they would make the ship go under quarantine, and it was 40 days that they had. And I mean, quarantine,
Yeah.
right? So it makes sense. But it was just a word that we used. I never ever thought about it.
Oh, I love etymology. I love looking at where words come from,
Right,
especially as a
right.
history teacher. You
Yeah.
see a lot of correlation between different words. And J.R. Tolkien, we all know who he is. He was an
Oh, yeah.
etymologist at Oxford. He studied language, and it shows up in his works.
Sure. His work's awesome. Did you see they did, what was it on? I think it was on HBO or something like that. They did a story of the Tolkien's life, like the
I've seen a couple of those. Yeah, I
it
love it.
was, yeah, no, it was interesting. I mean, he was a guy that was fighting in World War One and all that kind of
Which
stuff.
which shaped a lot of his ideas of war and the things
Yep.
that made it into his stories.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. So I mean,
So
amazing.
history shows up everywhere. It influences us.
Right, right. Like I said, I was not the greatest student, but I think that if I would have had, I don't want to blame my teachers, but if I would have had a couple different teachers, like now it's super important to me to find those things out. I've been teaching myself to speak German for about 6 years now, and I knew a couple phrases because my grandparents were from Germany. Um, but to learn another language like that, and then when you go somewhere, even like you go to Mexico, and someone's like, "Hey, can I get a cab?" And I'm like, "It'd be much easier if you use the word taxi, because that would be more, everyone will understand that. You're using a slang."
Right.
So like
You mean
this,
it doesn't work when you just talk louder? No, a cab.
slower, right, much slower. Now that's pretty much what she did. She's like, "I need a." I'm like, "Okay, that's not gonna help." But so yeah, language is super cool. I still make the argument that math and science, as far as my boys go, they're going to be engineers. Like they're looking to go to college to be engineers. I've always pushed math and science on it, math and science, and I'm like, "Listen, dude,
So important.
right? If someday you go to Mars, 5 apples and 7 apples is 12 apples. It doesn't matter if they're apples or if they're nuts or bolts or whatever, but that's a universal language is math. So be well versed
But
in
then you got the science behind how many seeds are in each of those apples. What kind of soil do you need to grow those seeds so those apples will grow?
right,
You
right.
take it a step further.
I tell you what, I'm a sci-fi guy myself. Like I would say like I like fantasy for sure. Like the Lord of the Rings stuff is awesome. Um, and then the Star Wars stuff. I love all that stuff too.
I got my Star Wars shelves here,
Yes, nice,
Star Wars, and I got my fantasy and Dungeons and
there you
Dragons
go. There you go.
over here. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons on Google Hangouts with my buddies since we can't get together.
Nice, nice.
I got
I played Dungeons and Dragons with guys. Yeah, when we were like 13 years old, but never
yeah,
went back there.
I host the club at school, so I teach them high school kids. They love it how to play Dungeons and Dragons. So
Yeah, right,
talk
right,
about
right.
getting back to mental math, rolling the dice, and having to add that all up.
Absolutely. As a
It's such
25
a
guy.
yeah. When I had to put my proposal together to make sure I got paid from my club, I had to lay out, hey man, this is teaching leadership skills. We're sitting around a table. They're problem solving. We're using math. There's so many positive things that uh, and since we've been in quarantine, we've paid. I've got my family. We've been playing Settlers of Catan. We've been playing Ticket to Ride. We've been playing all kinds of card games,
Yeah, yeah,
and all of those things. That as a teacher, you look at the instructional value of that. Like you got geography. We play Ticket to Ride. You got a map of Europe in front of us. All the European countries' names are in the indigenous language.
right,
So
right,
Amanda's like, oh, why can't they put these in English? I said, no, this is better. The name is in that country's language. What if
right, right,
they're
right.
calling Chicago by its Chinese name in 10 years? Whatever that may be. I don't know what it is.
So yeah, learning German, it's every country's got a different name than we call it. I mean, even Germany's not Germany; it's Deutschland. So I mean, like it's interesting as far as that goes. And I should like I think the most we've done is we played some Texas Hold'em, and I try to explain to my sons that that's a skill game. That you're calculating odds by what's left in the deck and stuff like that. But and we don't have stuff like we should get something like Risk or something like that around to
No, I
like
got them all. I got everything
right,
here.
right, right, right. And
I
I
love board games. I had three brothers, so it's cutthroat. Now I got a house full of girls, but it goes back to me being playing games with my brothers and my dad, who he wasn't the guy that lets you win. We had to earn that victory from my dad. I
sure, sure.
appreciate those lessons. I remember
Yeah,
the first time I was able to beat him on the basketball court when I was about 13 or 14 years old. It was a momentous occasion.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Uh, what you call it? So okay, so you're gonna work. Are they already planning on at your high school riding the rest of the year out on e-learning?
It's not official, but if I was going to place a bet, I'd say yeah. I don't think it's coming. Our superintendent basically said whatever Pritzker tells us to do, we're going to do, and I'm pretty sure that he's not going to open things up based on his. I listen to his news conference every day, and
Mhm.
he's playing it very cautious. That's the way he wants to do it. He wants to save lives. He said, "This is why I'm doing it."
Yeah,
So I think if we stay closed and that prevents it going through our school and some of the kids bringing it home to their grandparents and stuff like that, then we'll ride the rest of the year out, and I'll do the best I can, providing the education I can. You know,
right,
e-learning.
right.
This format helps so they can see me. Uh, let me. I had something pulled up here. Let me read something to you real quick from a student. So last week, my writing assignment. I do a writing assignment every Friday. I call it the Friday Time Machine, where they write in the time period. So this past week, I said, you know what? We're in history right now. This is the biggest news in my lifetime.
Yeah,
So write about what your life's been like over the past couple weeks since we've been shut down. And almost unanimously, they all, and I got about 80 out of my 120 students have been keeping up with all their assignments, which is pretty good. This is pretty much how all of them have gone. So let me read this to you real quick.
sure.
My life stuck in the house for 2 weeks is boring. I've been just sitting in my room doing assignments, bored out of my mind. I thought that this break would be very awesome and amazing, and this would be chill, but I was wrong. I'd rather be at school than home. I've been watching Netflix as well, and for some reason it was even more boring than I thought. In conclusion, I have jinxed myself and that I would be happier at school than at home. And that's I've got probably about 40 or 50 little writing assignments that are pretty much saying the same thing. Kids want to get back to school. They want to see their friends. They want to do the
Yeah,
sports. I
right.
mean, what are we missing? We're missing seniors are missing baseball. They're missing tennis. They're missing softball.
Right.
Whatever sports are going on right now. We
Yeah.
lost a lot of the state championships.
Right.
But this is man, when I was in high school, that was the thing, man. We played sports and we lived for those moments. The
Sure.
the game-winning hit or the game-winning shot. These things have been taken away from kids.
I
It's
remember when senior year was coming to an end, and I remember thinking, where am I going to find girls? Like, this is why I was at school. So, like, that's over now. I can't believe that I'm not going to go to a place where all the girls go every single day, like, or every, 5 days a week. That seemed crazy to me. And then my boys are seniors at West. Yeah, those last couple months of senior year, those are a blast. I mean, it's terrific. I mean, they had guys last year that were seniors that were on the wrestling team that were upset when the year was coming to an end because they
yeah.
were going to be leaving, going to college, whatever. Now, I mean, I said to my sons the other day, I'm like, I don't know if something happens and this thing doesn't get corrected and they don't start your school year next year. Like my boys have been wrestling since kindergarten. If there's no wrestling next year, I'm almost inclined to tell you to take a year off, go do construction for the year, and then come back to it because you're going to miss out on all the things that going to college. My sons looked at a school, Naperville Central, which is about an hour and 40 minutes from here. And then they looked at some schools that were 5 and 6 and 3.5 hours away. And I don't want to influence them, but I almost encourage them to go to the 3.5, 4 hours away, just because you're going to get out of this area. You're not going to be able to hang out with your same friends. It's going to be the college experience that you should have. If that can't happen, if they're sitting here learning e-learning and they're supposed to be, in Iowa at school.
My stepdaughter's going to Iowa, and she's got a prom dress in the next room over, 10 feet away. She got a prom dress hanging in her room
Right,
that she might not be able to wear.
right, right, right.
She's got marching band camps for University of Iowa set up all summer long. Who knows if those are going to go off? So
Right. Yeah, now my guys we're looking at a couple of D3 schools in Iowa, but if they're not going to get the experience of actually going to school, I don't know. They should find some other thing to do for the year because I don't know. I think it's a huge experience to have is to be able to do that sort of thing. And then for them, like, we went to every college and we looked at the physics department. We were real serious about, what was going on with the physics or the engineering department. And then after that, we probably spent more time with the wrestling coaches and that kind of thing, looking at the wrestling programs because, that's what they're going to be spending a lot of their time doing. I couldn't imagine them. They've been in wrestling since they were in kindergarten, going to a year of school where there's no wrestling.
oh yeah, that's why they would that's why they would go there.
Right, right, right. So, I mean, I don't know what, I didn't go to college in that sense. I went right to working in the trades. And then when I got injured, I took college courses then because I was just, needed something to do. It wasn't the same as going to college. When I went to college, when I would have gone to college right out of school. But I mean, what do you think about that? Like, should they be now? You should just go to college, or I mean, my two guys have been doing carpentry work since they were 11 years old. They could probably make $35,000-$40,000 in a year.
It's called a gap year. It's common. It used to be. It
Right.
used to be the thing to do. Not that you can travel through Europe right now, but it used to be called a
Oh,
grand tour. If you had the money
yeah.
between high school and college, you take a year off. You go see the world.
Right.
See what you wanted to do with your life.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with a gap year. So make some money.
Right. 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 I mean, they make a pretty decent living. I mean, they in the 10 weeks they were off for summer last year, they probably made about $6,000 a piece. So they can make a decent buck, and then go do whatever you want. For a year, it just seems a waste to me to be sitting in front of a computer for a year doing that. Now, I think they should read and everything like that to keep their brains sharp. I was never a guy that read novels, but I dated a girl who turned me on to reading fiction, to reading novels, and I love it now. I mean, I have like favorite authors and all that kind of stuff. What's funny is if I'm going to watch a movie, like I can watch a Star Wars movie or a Lord of the Rings movie over and over and over again. But if I'm going to read a book, I think I've never read a fantasy or science fiction book. Yeah, I've never read one that was that way. My favorite authors are John Irving and um, who's all the pretty horses? McCarthy or whatever his name is. Uh, he's the guy that wrote The Road.
Oh,
I don't know. I can't
it's
think of his name right now.
it's something McCormack or something, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know why I can't bring it up, but anyway, so like those are the authors I like. The other guy, John Irving, is like The World According to Garp
Oh
and
yeah.
Cider House Rules and all that kind of stuff. I like him because there's always somebody that speaks German in most of the books. There's always wrestling in most of the books, and then there's always somebody that gets killed, and there's always some kind of like I don't know, coming of age sexual kind of thing that's going on in the books too. So like it's just they're interesting characters that are in the books, but I see a difference in myself when I'm reading books, like thought wise, than when I'm not.
Oh, I devour books. I read on my phone. I read on my iPad. I read nonstop. I love it. You'd forget about everything else that's going on in the world. And then I try to
Right.
encourage. I bring books to. I hand out books to students. This is. I think you like this. Here, read this. And
I don't think people have the same amount of time today that they used to. To
they
tell my
do. They do though. They read. People read constantly. Anybody that's got their face in their phone is reading. Are they reading quality
yeah,
stuff? Maybe not, but I mean,
some of that.
reading. Yeah, reading is reading. If they can use some of that time that FaceTime they got with their phone for reading quality stuff. Like
Yeah,
my kids make fun of me because I'll be sitting with my glasses on and I'll always have my phone right here like this.
yeah,
And I'm not on social media. I'm on my Nook app on my
sure,
phone, and
sure,
I'm
sure.
I'm reading novels.
I find a big difference in reading social media and then reading a novel. Like I kind of can get lost in a novel. Social media, like it's just like
No, it's passive aggressive.
yeah, it's all the time. I can't even do it. But uh, well, uh, I I think that hopefully there's a way to like have this be a teachable or a learning moment because there's got to be some upsides to the e-school thing. Like, what can
I
we get
think
out of that? Like,
I think it could be a combination of the e-learning and the classroom. Uh, right now, there's great strides in fine tuning this e-learning and trying to find the best formats. And I never even heard of Zoom until 3 weeks ago or something.
right?
These, I mean, these are great tools to assist what you do in the classroom. These are great tools for students to collaborate on projects that we assign in the classroom. So I think I'm cool with the shakeout of all this if it improves the things that we can use technology for. I think we got thrown in. We don't know how to swim. We got thrown in. Hey,
Right.
I got an email from administration. Hey, teachers, you have to have live classrooms twice a week. I'm like, I do. I don't know how to do that. All right, got to figure it out, right?
Now, are the classrooms that you do, are they recorded also? So say somebody's sick or somebody's, like didn't make it to the live one, can they still pull it up and watch the class later?
Uh, Not yet because I don't know how to do that. I gotta have to figure out how to record these, I guess.
Right, right, right.
It's learning experience. That's a good idea that I didn't think of. I should probably record these Zoom sessions and post them to my Google Classroom.
Right,
Uh,
right. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, the Zoom app it's amazing. When I was doing my studio is a little better than the quality that's here, right? So like when I do my podcast and I've got the two cameras set up and the microphones, the sound quality is a little bit better. The video, like I don't know on your end if you can see it or not, but like my video quality is better than your video quality on my end.
yeah, I'm just using my school issue laptop and my gaming headphones I play video games with.
Right.
I don't have a fish tank though. That's pretty cool. I've been staring at your fish here for
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
while.
yeah, yeah. And then that tank's actually, see if I can't. It's actually pretty damn big. It's a 340 gallon tank. Uh,
That's pretty cool.
my office is right behind there, so it's see through into the office. It's nice to the office is a nice place to be. As far as, doing work and then be able to take a break and look. Beyond where I'm at, there's a TV that's mounted on the wall. So like if I'm in the office, I can have the news on or something like that. If something's going on, I'll see if there's a school shooting or, whatever's happening while I'm working, in the office. But um, so, right. But this, if I did a whole podcast, 2 hour podcast, and then I put it onto software to edit it, to add in. Usually, I add in some photos and stuff like that. If someone's got a book they're promoting or something like that, or if they've got a CD that they brought, like I like having a music artist on and stuff. But it takes me hours to do that, and then it takes the editing software takes forever because it's loading this big file. Then when I load it to YouTube, it takes like 45 minutes to do it. I don't know if it's just a smaller compression that goes on with this, but this takes about 15 minutes to convert it to an MP4 file. Then it's converted. It's saved on my computer, this podcast that we're doing, and then I upload it to YouTube in 15 minutes. So an hour from now, this will be on YouTube. The only thing that I haven't figured out with this Zoom is how to do like a live podcast, because I do some of my podcasts live on YouTube, and I can take callers and stuff like that. So right now, I could take a caller, but they would just be coming into the conversation. They couldn't hear the conversation. So,
Right.
But I found it super interesting. This is super easy. I prefer to have a conversation where I can sit and talk with somebody. It seems weird because most of these conversations stay pretty on topic. The Zoom ones so far, the ones that I have someone sitting here, we venture off into like the weirdest like shit. Like, I had a real estate broker friend of mine on, and I mean, we were talking about everything from dating to, we both have sons that wrestle, and like the fact that pornography is so readily available, it kind of freaks me out a little bit because
Yeah,
that's
we have yeah, when we distribute iPads to students at school, it's an issue that always comes up, and not just the pornography that you can get offline, but the things that students share with each other is a big issue. They're all underage.
right.
Those are all felonies every time they hit a send button on something like that. So
Well, yeah, and there's another weird one. There was a guy in the locker room with my sons who they caught him on video. Somebody he was breaking into lockers, and somebody set up an iPhone with like, I don't know, motion detect, whatever kind of app it was, and it caught him coming into the locker, going through the guy's wallet, taking the money, left, and because it was in the locker room, they said they couldn't use the video to prosecute the kid,
oh
so they
wow.
couldn't do anything with them. Which, yeah, that's another weird one. And then the fact that, yes, they're mostly all under 18 years old, and who knows what they're sending each other, which that's another one that I don't get either. We got onto that too. She's an attractive real estate broker, and we got onto dudes sending, unsolicited, genital pictures. And it's like, what the hell are you thinking?
There's
But
some dumb people out there.
it come you know what? I would rather live in a world with this technology than without it, because I find it awesome that all of the things that you want to know, you can find, like boom, 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 like right now. Now, you were talking about earlier, and this is a question I have, and we'll get wrapped up here pretty soon because we're getting on 2 hours. But how do you deal with? So I have a real, like, my brain wants to break when anything that anybody says nowadays and they don't agree with it, you can just say fake news. That bothers me because truth is truth. I would say I get into more arguments on social media about something that is truth than an ideology that I have. I don't give a shit about that. The fact is that this is the truth, and you're deciding that it's not because you don't like the outcome. Like, I think the whole world falls apart if you can't have a conversation that's based in reality.
Yeah, big part of my curriculum is if we make historical statements, we have to find evidence to back it up. We don't make unclaimed historical statements.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's a Common Core standard. We have to find evidence to back up our statements. So
So how do you cite that? How do you, because like, I mean, I've read articles that said that schools won't let you use Wikipedia because it's, publicly sourced. But then again, if someone went through Wikipedia, it's just as reliable as an encyclopedia is.
Wikipedia is a great resource, but you use the resources at the bottom of Wikipedia. Usually it's all cited. So I
Right.
tell students, yeah, go ahead, use Wikipedia as a table of contents. Go get a more credible source. Even things written by people with dissertations at Harvard have incorrect things in them, right? We try to find the most reliable sources. Doesn't mean everything's perfect, but you know National Enquirer obviously isn't a
No.
reputable source. If you're going to quote something from Fox News, you better have the counterpoint coming from CNN News, because you're looking at bias. You're looking at two different perspectives there. So
Right. Now I don't watch CNN, but I do watch Fox, but not like I watch Fox to find out where the bullshit is. Because I'll tell you what, and I mean maybe it's just my slant on it. They're mostly full of shit. Like it's amazing to watch just this coronavirus thing, to watch the about face that entire network did. And it's funny because like satire shows like The Daily Show will put together a montage of these people saying one thing and then 2 weeks later completely saying the opposite and saying that they never said the thing that they said on video. And in my head once,
it's all opinion pieces now. They got these 24-hour news shows
right.
that have 24 hours to fill. You can't have Walter Cronkite on for 24 hours. We need a Walter Cronkite. We don't have a Walter Cronkite. We don't have a new who's giving us just the facts.
No, I don't know.
Nobody.
Could we have that? Would he be able to get enough clicks to make any money, first off? And then second off, if he was giving you just the facts, would anyone believe him?
In this day and age?
Right. It's bothering me. This is something that honestly, like I tell you what, I think I lose sleep over it because I don't understand how something that could be and I mean, I don't mind having someone that's a conspiracy theory, person on the podcast. I absolutely like to talk to them. I sat down with a flat earther, not on the podcast, before I was doing the podcast. And the amount of YouTube videos that this guy had access to, the amount of this, the story that he had was as good as a fantasy novel. It was amazing. The amount of like actual people from history he was drawing into his, theories, and like these other crazy, Antarctica's this wall of ice and like all this, like he had it all sewn up, and I was like, oh my god. And then the other one was the QAnon thing where they think that like there's the secret deep state and all this other stuff. I'm like, man, you could have a PhD in something with the amount of time you've wasted on this nonsense. You know what I mean? Like
Illuminati theories, right?
Well, the ones that really freak me out are the ones that are so slanderous. There's a big thing out there that about like Tom Hanks and his wife not actually.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like,
that's ridiculous.
Tom Hanks seems like a freaking normal guy, which is probably a very hard thing to do when you're that famous to begin with. And they've made him into a pedophile and everything else. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Where's the evidence? There's no evidence.
There's no evidence of it. The other one is like, you got a guy like Bill Gates, who is a monstrous philanthropist, right? This guy.
Oh, I know where you're going with this. I just read this.
And my hair was blown back by, there are people justifying something on some tech guy that worked for one of the biggest tech guys on the planet. So I'm sure he's got dozens of these guys having child porn on his computer. Now, I don't know how that relates to Gates being into child porn.
The one I thought you were going with is Bill Gates. This is a headline recently. Bill Gates is testing cancer vaccines on Indian children or something like that in India.
No, I
Uh,
didn't see that one.
yeah, that's
This
another one.
one
But
is
you
some
see
guy.
these come up all the time for these guys. Like really,
Right.
I don't think Bill Gates is testing cancer vaccines and deforming children in
No, no,
India.
right, right. I mean, he's honestly doing a lot. This is a guy who started that pledge that like Warren Buffett signed and everyone else to give away half of their wealth before they die, sort
Hmm.
of a thing, like to give it away. I think these people, wealth becomes a very important thing to them. To give it away is a big deal. Like these are genuinely people who are trying to make a difference, and you're breaking them down with, this craziness. So like I like to have them on, and I like to like talk counterpoint with them. I don't. Everyone can believe what they want to believe, so I don't want to beat them up or anything like that. I'm a skeptic on all that
You're
stuff.
better. You're better than me because if I got a flat earther on here, I'd tear them apart.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to talk to them and try and. My problem is I could never get them to have a full conversation if I went right at them. Do you know what I mean? Like they would just shut down and be like, "I'll forget it." And I'm like,
Yeah.
listen, I want you to explain all of the ludicrousness that you're talking about and like everything else. Like, and what I say to them is, I just want you to connect the dots. And they seem to light up on that. They're like, I got it. I know how to connect the dots. And I'm like, oh Lord. So, being a history teacher and having to decipher what's real and what's not real, that's got to be difficult, especially seeing that throughout history, the victors write history. So some of that's bullshit too.
It's hard to find sources that bring in alternate opinions, especially when we were just dealing with imperialism in Africa. Trying to find anything on the kingdoms of Africa before European contact is near impossible. I mean, there are. We found some resources and did some research, but it's everything's got a Eurocentric swing as far as history.
Now, that some of that stuff too drives me nuts because you'll get a racist that hears something about Africa during the slave trade, and they grab onto some nugget about a king selling his own people to the slave trade, and they'll blame the entire slave trade on other black people. And I'm like, listen, dude, like,
The only innocent people in it all are the people who were enslaved. Those who stood by and watched are guilty. Those who engaged in it are guilty. Those people who allowed their own people to be taken are guilty. The only innocent people are the 12.5 million slaves that were brought over from Africa.
I had a guy named Kwame Johnson on my podcast, and he's a Black history teacher in the Chicago public school system. So he teaches Black history, and he was. You would think a guy like that would have a different view on like reparations and stuff, like a really extreme one, but he didn't. Um, he looked at stuff like I think Georgetown University was built on slave labor, and they offered a free education or something like that to anybody who can trace their lineage back to somebody who built the school, sort of thing. And he said for him, he felt like as far as Georgetown went, if that was there, that was reparations. That was trying to make good on something that happened in a time where that was socially acceptable to do what they did. I mean, the White House in this country was built on slave labor. So, I don't know, I don't have any thoughts on reparations. That's not something that I think about, but it's definitely a topic that, would rile feathers as far as, some people go.
Oh yeah, but it's tough to trace lineage also, and who gets reparations and who's gonna
Right.
try to get reparations. That what are reparations? What
Yes. I don't know how you make that.
should Irish Americans get reparations,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because
Right.
at one point in history they were treated the same way, though that ended much quicker than the slave trade. But
Sure.
a lot of Irish were brought over in the same slave trade. So yeah, I mean it's something that is individual.
Now
It's
you're at a prep school, but is that a so that's a private school, right?
No, it's a public charter school. It's a
Oh,
lottery
okay.
pick. So in Richton Park, in the Matson School District area, I'm not sure exactly what communities feed into it, but we get applicants and they do a lottery.
Okay.
So quite a few more students apply to get into that school than are actually accepted into that school. It's a big news piece in the Richton Park area when the lottery goes down, which we just postponed. We have a 100% graduation rate,
Oh, wow.
and
Nice.
and we get we have some of the highest SAT and ACT scores for a predominantly African American high school in the entire country.
So now,
That's non-selective.
how do you feel about the whole charter school? You know, because like there's a debate there, right? Like that people want they want to get rid of public schools and want to go to charter schools instead.
I'm a strong proponent for public schools. I think
Okay.
public schools are good.
Okay.
Uh, there are some good charter schools and there are some horrible for-profit charter schools. I think that there, especially in communities where maybe the public schools aren't the best option. Hey, we've had charter schools in this country since the beginning. It's called Catholic schools.
Right. 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 Right.
So,
But there's
uh,
no religion at yours, right?
no,
Right.
no,
Okay. All right.
yeah, it's a public school in the Matson School District area, and you just have to get chosen to go there. We have the longest school day in the state of Illinois, really strict dress code policies, uh, really strong administration presence. Uh,
Do the students feel privileged to be have won that lottery?
no, they hate it.
Really?
It's the parents who feel privileged. They're getting a better education. They're getting more opportunity to get into the colleges that they want. We're pushing them to get higher SAT, ACT scores. Our SAT and ACT scores aren't that much lower than Lincoln Way's, which are some of the best
Yes.
in the
Yes.
area. Predominantly white,
Right.
privileged area. We're traditionally African Americans score lower on those standardized tests, not because of capability, because of rigor provided in those communities. We understand that and we try to provide as much rigor as possible. And for the most part, we almost closed the gap within 3 years, providing the rigor. So,
Okay, now I mean I understand what rigor is, but you're saying the amount of push you put on these kids.
mhm.
Okay,
They don't like it. They don't like it, but it, when they graduate and they look back, they appreciate it.
yeah, right, right,
Yeah,
right.
we push these kids, and most of them, especially freshmen, they hit a wall first year. So they get there at 7:30. They don't leave till 5 o'clock. I mean, it's a long school day. They have let's see, they got 8 classes, 7 classes, minus lunch. 7 classes throughout the day. They don't have really any options. 4 years of math, 4 years of science.
So the school's government funded, but it's private, so there are shareholders or profit people. Someone's making a profit from the school.
No, it's a public school.
Oh, it's
We
share.
get yeah, we cut into the rich school districts enrollment and money. We get the same money per pupil as the rich schools do in that area.
Yeah, because my sons going to Lincoln Way, they would wrestle at Rich South or one of those, or one of the schools in Markham and stuff like that. And we were here one day doing something, and they're like, "Oh, we got to go to Thornton or something like that." He goes, "It's terrible," and I'm
Oh,
like,
it's
"Why?"
horrible.
Yeah, and he goes, "Well, the locker rooms are disgusting. The showers don't work.
Hmm.
Everything's gross." He goes, "The wrestlers, there's hardly enough to feel the squat half the time, so we're just there sitting there." And my son goes, "Why is it that in the black neighborhoods the schools are so bad?" And I was like, "Well, all I can tell you is this: the school's funding is usually directly tied to property values. The property values are less in those areas, so they just don't have the funding." So I go, you got to consider yourself lucky or blessed or whatever word you want to use that you're a white kid in America growing up in a affluent neighborhood because you think the locker room looks bad. I'm positive they don't have the computers you have. I'm positive that they don't have the resources in the classroom that you have and everything else. And the test scores show that that they just don't produce the same setup. So
Yeah, and we provide an alternative to those situations in that area. And by providing the rigor, providing the resources in the classroom, our school shows that with the same access to education, the African American students can do just as well as the affluent white kids,
Right.
and
What is that?
in some cases even better, because they know that they got to work a little bit harder to close that gap.
Right.
So,
What did Joe Biden say? He said poor kids can do just as good as white kids.
yeah,
Holy shit, Joe.
but we're a middle class area. I mean, Richmond Park's a great community, so it's a little bit different. I'm not in inner city Chicago. The kids are all middle class kids. They're bright. They don't have, they're not going home to situations that we oftentimes see in inner city.
Right.
There's not gang issues, things like that. They're I mean, all the kids I teach, they fit right in at Lincoln Way. It's not black versus white. It's not race. It's socioeconomic status. The
I wish people would understand that, Brian. I really do. I wish people would understand that I've got more in common with the parents in your school district than I do with Donald Trump and like anyone who's got $50 million. I've got more in common with a black guy, a Mexican guy, all this other stuff. They're working for a living
mm-hmm.
because we're from the same economic background.
Yeah,
we work for a living.
Shop at the same stores, go to the same restaurants, go to the same church, whatever.
But somehow we're divided over, religion and race and, your sexual preference and all this other stuff, which just doesn't matter. I'm encouraged by talking to, I spend a lot of time talking with my sons, like a lot about things. And I'm super encouraged by the lack of bullying that goes on with them in school. The fighting is almost non-existent compared to when I was in school. I mean, I got my first fight in 5th grade, and I got into multiple fights every year all the way through school. I mean, every year of high school, in school, I got into fights. Dean Gardner to pull me off guys. This was always going on. And then we were talking a couple months ago, if there's an interracial relationship, my sons that said that's not a thing that anybody even cares about hardly in their school.
No.
It would have been a talk.
Yeah, we got a little bit of diversity in our school. I mean, not much. It's predominantly African American, but it's no different. You don't notice. Who cares? They're just kids. Right. And you got white kids and Hispanic kids and whatever, and they're all friends, and they're better than us. Really, they're better than our generation. And I tell them that in the classroom. You got to do it better than our generation. We're doing it better than our parents' generation.
Yep.
Right. So we just got to keep moving forward. And being a teacher, you'd think that I would be jaded and be like, oh man, we're screwed. These kids are horrible these days. It's completely opposite. I got some knuckleheads, but predominantly the future looks pretty bright with the young kids that are coming up that I see. You can see it with your own kids.
I take offense when I see these people on social media posting about kids eating Tide Pods and this generation. You're not going to start a revolution. You can't start a lawnmower. I think it's complete bullshit. And these are people that are parents that are posting this nonsense. I think to myself, that's a reflection of you. If your kid is eating Tide Pods, that's on you. My kids aren't eating Tide Pods.
So, my kids aren't either.
Right. So what are we talking about here? You're making a fool of yourself. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, I don't have any romanticized notion that, we need to get back to how it was in the 50s and shit like that. Like that isn't, no way. I mean, every generation was far more racist than the one that it was before. So
right.
Yeah, right. No. So I'm glad to see that. I'm glad to hear that that's what's going on in your neighborhood too. But well, hey man, we'll wrap it up. I think we covered quite a bit.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. It's a good time.
Very good, very good. We'll talk again sometime. We'll see what goes on when hopefully the school year starts, because that's making me nervous.
Yeah, hopefully we get it going soon for the economy, for all the small businesses and everything that are struggling right now.
Right, for sure.
Get people buying houses again for you, right?
I know. I need something, some work. All
All
right.
right.
Take care, man.
Thanks, man. Take it easy.
Take care.